Hello, all you Velocity bankers out there. I'm Jen, and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. Today, I want to go over something that I haven't really gone over with you guys in a while, okay? And it's really going to be focusing on hammering down your mortgage and using Velocity Banking to get yourself debt-free from the biggest debt that you have, the biggest debt that most people have, which is their mortgage. Now, I know that when we talk about velocity banking, and those of you that are new to our channel are trying to figure out what velocity banking is. Well, velocity banking is a style of banking, okay, a strategy where you are beating the traditional banking system that holds you down and keeps you payment poor. So, how does it do that? Well, velocity banking focuses on a couple different things. It focuses on parking your income onto lines of credit to then reduce your overall interest on those lines of credit. So for those of you that have been following, really understand how this works. And today I am going to break that down a little bit for you today so that if you're new to our channel and you're new to learning about velocity banking, this will make some sense for you, okay? Now, I started on Easter. I talked about a student scenario of ours with Jason and Kelly, and I wanted to, and I went into the debts that they had, and then I talked about the fact that they were looking into refinancing their mortgage to take cash out to then slap it down against these debts to help get them out of debt. While at the same time, they were sitting with $56,186 in their savings. And we came up with a couple different solutions for them, but the one that made the most sense for them at the end of the day was not to refinance that mortgage and to take that $56,000 and pay off these debts. And I know that seems scary to many of you, right? Because we know that the traditional banks teach you, okay, and there's many gurus out there that teach you that you need to be keeping 3 to 6 months on deposit with the bank for shiznit money, right? So if something happens and you were to lose your job or you somebody gets ill and can't work, so you have to have a place to go for money, right? Now, you can do that. You can keep money sitting in the bank, but what happens when you have debts like this? Okay, so what happens then? What happens is your money is sitting in savings at 0.01%, earning 0.01%, $56,000 of it, so that's on hand for you, right? It's not invested in anything. It's on hand for you because you need 3 to 6 months of savings on deposit, right? So that's what we're being told. Well, is that smart or not? And you'll know that when we went into the scenario on Easter, and those of you that watch know that that wasn't so smart, because we know that when you're sitting at 23, 24, 21, and 11% interest rates, right? That becomes, and these are lucky rates for them, right? Because we know that a lot of you out there are sitting at 27, 29, 30, 32% interest rates, if not higher, okay? When you're sitting on debts like those, okay, in interest rates like those, I mean, debts like these and interest rates like those, you are going backwards when you're earning 0.01% on that savings. So why then wouldn't you take it and slap it down, knowing that you can use your velocity banking, you can velocity bank your way out when you have a line of credit. Now, lines of credit. You can use a home equity line of credit. You can use a personal line of credit. You can use a revolving line of credit like a credit card. It matters not which line of credit you use, okay? You can velocity bank your way out of these debts much faster than sitting there with a traditional bank and traditionally banking, okay? And so that's a scenario that I showed you guys. And I showed you that at the end of the day, okay, when their mortgage would be finished, okay, at the end of the 30 years, they would be spending $315,644 in interest, okay? And if they were to take that cash out and refinance their loans and pushed that loan a dollar amount back up to, it would have been $339,000, okay? If they would have done that, they would have reset the clock and they would have paid interest all over again. Now, what on earth do I mean by they would have paid interest all over again? And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today, because in 6.5 years, this couple has spent $95,953 in interest. So if they were to refinance and take out $50,000 to pay down these debts because they wanted to hang on to that savings, what did that actually do to them? Well, they just threw away $95,000 worth, and then they reset the clock because they reset their mortgage at 30 years. So we are going to show you how you can stop that from happening and how you can save yourself a whole lot of money at the end of the day when you learn velocity banking. Now, when Dan and I first learned velocity banking and we had debts that we needed to take care of, and I've told my story a million times, how we looked at maybe filing for bankruptcy. We didn't end up doing that because we found velocity banking. And we learned how to pay off our debts in rapid time, right? Rapid, quick. Time is money. So getting rid of those debts was the best thing we could have done and best thing that we did do. So what we didn't do is we didn't go into bankruptcy and we found a better way. But I remember listening to people talking about velocity banking as I'm working my strategy, and I'm stressing out because they're talking about mortgages, right? They're talking about how mortgages are stealing your wealth. And I could really feel that because I can see and understand this number here, right? And I know you guys can too. You don't necessarily feel it, right? Because it's not real to you at this point because 30 years haven't passed and you haven't yet spent this in interest. But every day that goes by, I knew that I was losing out on interest. So I am going to show you how to stop that when you don't have money in the bank to slap down on your mortgage, how you can make this work. And you can do it through velocity banking. All right, so velocity bank your mortgage down. That's exactly what I'm going to be talking to you guys today. That is what I'm going to be clearing the board later, and I'm going to show you an amortized mortgage schedule and how this actually works and the beauty of velocity banking your way out of your mortgage and saving you time. So your mortgage is actually a parasite, okay? So your mortgage is like this live thing, right? It's a parasite and it steals your wealth. And in this case, okay, in Kelly and Jason's case, it is stealing $635,000. I'm sorry, $145,000 in total payments. Okay, that's what they would pay over time to finish this mortgage out in 30 years. Okay, they started at $319,500. Currently, have their mortgage is at $289,000. Okay, so it's right about $289,000. So this is what they will spend in total for that mortgage over 30 years. Now, how is a mortgage a parasite? Well, number one, it steals your wealth, right? It steals the wealth that you have or that you could have. Number two, it keeps you making payments. The whole idea behind velocity banking is getting rid of payments, right? It's getting those payments back as cash flow to work down your debts so that you have real cash flow at the end of the day that you can do whatever you want with, okay? At this point in time, when you're velocity banking, all that cash flow goes to work down your debts that you don't feel, right? Because you're turning those payments into cash flow. Now, number three, it also, what does the mortgage do? Well, it feeds the bank interest. It's feeding the bank interest. And in this case, it is feeding the bank over 30 years, $315,000. So it has bought the bank another house, right? So it's bought the bank a house. Eventually, they're going to buy their house and it's stealing wealth, all right? Currently, up to this point in time, Kelly and Jason have spent $95,953 on this mortgage in just interest alone. That has nothing to do with paying down their mortgage. It has everything to do with feeding that bank interest. And that's what we need to stop, right? You guys need to take control. We are giving you back control over your life because right now, you guys have found this channel. Many of you have found this channel because you feel out of control. You don't feel like you're in control of any of your finances, truly. And we are going to put you back in the driver's seat for real this time, right? By learning a new skill, by learning to velocity bank your way out. And not only are you going to be able to take care of your debts that you have, right? Excluding the mortgage, right? Not only will you be able to take care of debts like these, but at the end of the day, you are going to learn how to take care of your mortgage, even if you don't have any cash to do it with, right? So let's talk about that. Okay, so we can stop all of this, right? The mortgage parasite. We can stop this by using pay down strategy by employing velocity banking, okay? And how? How do we do that? Well, we pay off debts and we're going to work down the mortgage after we get our major debts taken care of, all right? Now, we hear objections, right? So the objections that we hear all the time are, I don't have any money to pay down my mortgage. How am I going to pay down my mortgage? I don't have any savings. I don't have anything I can pay my mortgage down with. You don't? Really? Let's talk about that. So if you have a home equity line of credit, if you have a personal line of credit, if you have a revolving line of credit at a 0% offer out there, you can pay down your mortgage, okay? You can. Now, if you don't currently have these things, well, guess what? You currently don't have these things because maybe you have a poor credit score and you can't get any of these things. Maybe that's something, or maybe that's an issue. Maybe you don't have any equity in your home. Maybe that's part of the issue. Well, guess what? When you learn velocity banking and you start running your finances this way, your credit scores are going to shoot through the roof because you will be paying down your debts and you will be paying them down in rapid time. So your scores will no longer be a problem at the point we're ready to do this, right? And not only that, when you don't have any other option, like you don't have your home equity line of credit, right? Well, guess what? You could do a personal line of credit. And a personal line of credit, if the bank gives you $10,000 to $15,000 in a personal line of credit, we can do this all day long, can't we? And we know that we have these beautiful things out there called credit cards that are not your enemy, that are actually your best friend if you run them properly, if you run them the pay down strategy way, which is to velocity bank with them. You know that a 0% credit card can give you $10,000 in cash that you could slap against that mortgage and work down the velocity way, okay? So that objection, we can check that baby right off, right? Because we've taken care of that. We don't need that as an objection because we can pass right through it. The other objection we hear a lot is, I'm in debt and I can't put extra on my mortgage. Well, you can't. At this point in time, if you're sitting in debts like this, you're right, you really can't. And that is okay because you are going to velocity bank your way right out of that. And in a couple years' time, you will be able to take care of that mortgage by velocity banking your way out of that sucker too. And that is the point of today. All right, so let me recap Kelly and Jason really quickly for you. And then I'm going to show you an amortized schedule and I'm going to show you what it looks like and how you can velocity bank your way out of your mortgage much faster. All right. So to recap, our student scenario is Kelly and Jason. They had $56,186 in savings. We sat down with them, we worked a plan for them, we worked a strategy, and we came up with taking that cash and slapping it down on their debts to help them get out of this mortgage, okay? Or I'm sorry, to help them get out of their debts. So if you recall, they had an income of $9,300. Their expenses were $9,012 and their cash flow was $288. And if you recall, I also said that $288 doesn't get you a whole lot in a month's worth of time when you have something happen. You find out your kid needs braces, right? All of a sudden, that extra money is now a payment to pay off the braces that your kid gets, right? So that could be, just any number of things, right, that happen in a month that can eat that up. So another example is, we've got a truck sitting out there that needs new brakes, right? It has a frozen caliper, I believe. So Dan's going to end up working on that today. $288 in parts, that's gone, right? So now they'd be sitting at zero if they had something like that happen. And guess what? Something happens every month, doesn't it? Or just about. So we know that we need as much cash flow available to us as possible. So that's what we're looking at for these guys. Now, we know that their mortgage currently is $289,000, okay? They've been in it about 6.5 years. It started at, I think, $319,500 is what it started at. Their payment is $1,842. It's at a 5.25% rate, okay? Now, they have a home equity line of credit that the balance on that was at $9,860 with a payment of $191 at 11.25%. And that to term that out without doing velocity banking, and I'm again recapping, is going to be $3,680 over 6 years. They had an American Express card that was at $23,629. The payment is $689 at a 23%, right? To term that one out, it was going to be $15,228 over 5 years. Then they had an Ink card at $32,000. That was a business card. $32,164. The payment was $964 at a 24% interest rate, and it is, to term that out, $21,368 over almost 5 years. They have a Slate card at $15,108 at a $415 payment, 21% interest rate, and they will term that out at $9,118 over 5 years. And they also have a car loan, okay? So this car loan's they're about a year in. They have one car paid off, so this is the remainder. Car loan at $42,048. Their payment is $973, you guys. That's a payment, and it is at 5.25%. Okay, so to term that out, they will spend $7,132 over 5 years. So total debts, excluding the mortgage, is $122,809. At their payments on these are $5,074, all of their payments, including their mortgage. And then we've got a total payback, a total term out amount in interest of $56,526. This is why they need to learn velocity banking, and this is why they came to us, because they were considering a cash out refi, all right? And we talked them out of it. At the end of the day, it's your decision, right? You guys, we give you choices. It's up to you to make the changes. We're never going to tell you what to do. It is your money and your choice, and that should be up to you. And I'm never going to judge you. Dan is never going to judge you. You guys do you, we'll do us, right? We just wanted to give you some situations and some scenarios that will help you feel in control. All right, so they took $56,000 and they paid off their two debts here, the American Express and the Ink card. Okay, they paid those off. And they also then were going to use this home equity line of credit to pay off the slate and to put a little bit of money on that car loan, because their home equity is at $35,000, and we still wanted to leave them a little wiggle room. Okay, so we took it up to $30,000. So when we made these payments, all right, so we slapped down the 56, that left them with $80,761. Okay, so here, I'm sorry, their payments or their debts are $80,761. These right here, all right. And so when we take, so these ones, I'm excluding the car loan here. So when we take the $80,761 and we subtract off the 56, okay, we're left with $24,575. Now, we want to take that up to 30 though, right? So we want to pay off as much as we can for them as quickly as we can. So that means we have about $5,425 that we will then put against this car balance, right? The principal balance, to then pay that car down a little bit. All right. So that means that they will have $36,623 left on this car loan when we start, okay, or when they start this, knowing that we are going to start with a $30,000 home equity line of credit balance. Okay, that's where we're starting from. Okay, so what we then have to consider here is, what amount of their income can they use? Well, because it is a line of credit, such as a home equity line of credit or a personal line of credit, both of those, you can run all of your expenses out of these lines of credit, because we are putting every dollar of our income onto that line of credit. So what happens is your direct deposit comes into your checking account. It sits there for about a second, and then you're going to pay as a payment all $9,300 of it onto that home equity line of credit. Okay, so all of it's going to be gone. You don't have to hold anything out into your checking account, because we know that as the bills come in and hit the checking account, it will be paid through the checking account and it will come out of that line of credit. So basically, you're putting money as a payment onto that line of credit, and then it's going to come back out of that line of credit to pay for your expenses. Now, I realize that seems counterintuitive, right? Because I have people ask me all the time, Jen, I don't understand. Why would I be putting all of my money on this line of credit when I'm just going to pay my mortgage in a few days' time with it? Well, the reason being is, remember, lines of credit are calculated on an average daily balance. And when your deposit of your payment, I should say, of your direct deposit comes in onto that line of credit, it drops that balance in a second, right? So it would drop that balance by $9,300. And then your interest then at that point is going to be lower, okay? So the amount you pay that month in interest will be lower. And that is what makes velocity banking work. That is why we use lines of credit. That is why velocity banking is so incredibly powerful. It is that income in, dropping your interest rate, right? Dropping the interest rate on that line of credit and allowing you to win and pay things off faster. So let's get into our example here, right? So again, still on our recap here, we have our $30,000. We know we bring in our $9,300, which is our income. and it drops our balance immediately. You see, guys, see how it drops it to 20,700? You go from 30,000, which is your high balance, to your low balance for the month at 20,700 due to this income in. That is magical, right? That is the magic, because why? Monthly adding gentle interest charges, magic. It drops this interest lower. Okay, so this becomes lower. You're not sitting at the 30 all month long. You're averaging out, allowing you to add a gentle interest charge versus the high interest charge. Okay, so 30,000, we start with your 9,300 comes in, drops you to 20,700. Then you have to, your expenses come out, and we have new expenses, don't we? Our new expenses are no longer $9,012. Our new expenses are $67.53. Well, where am I getting that? Where am I getting it from? Okay, great question. Let's find out how to answer that. All right, so if we take the $9,012, right? So we start off with $9,012, which is our expenses. Now, we are getting rid of the home equity line payment because we're putting a chunk into that home equity line of credit. So that payment comes back to us as cash flow. So we no longer owe the $191. So we take our $9,012, okay, and we're going to subtract out the $191. Now that takes us down to $88.21, okay? So then we know that we paid off the American Express, right? Because that was partial savings, we paid it off, and we can subtract out our $689, right? Because the $689 then no longer exists. We paid it off. Then we have our ink card. We also use funds from the savings to pay the ink card off. So this also goes away. So we subtract out the $964, okay? So there's $71.68. All right. And we know that we paid the Slate card off because we took our home equity line up to $30,000. So we paid our Slate card off. So this payment then comes back to us, right? Okay. So we're at $67.53, right? $67.53. Now, we didn't subtract this out, right? Because we put a chunk down on it, but we're still making that monthly payment. We have to pay for this car still, so we're paying it. So now we have to work with this $30,000 that paid off these 4 debts, and we're still paying our car, and we're still paying our mortgage. All right. So again, we're working this down, right? So right now we know we've paid $67.53. We know our interest rate is $237. How did I get that? I added my high balance plus my low balance, right? So we take the 30, we add the 2,700, we add that together, and we divide it by 2, right? We divide it by 2 because we're taking an average. It doesn't stay at the 30 and it doesn't stay at the 20. So we need an average to figure out what our interest rate is for that month. All right, so then we have to multiply it by our loan rate, which is 11.25%. We have to turn it into a decimal though, okay? So it's going to be 0.1125, okay? So 0.1125. So that number then has to then be divided by 12 because, all right, that was the 1 year amount, okay? The interest you would have paid for 1 year. We don't want 1 year. We want 1 month because we know we're working this down every month. So there we get our 237. All right. So now what you'll recall is we worked this down. So we worked all of this down and we got to 9 months and it was paid off. So then what we did is during this 9 months of time, we had car interest that we've paid of $1,896, okay? We had car interest that we paid. So at that time, our car balance was $31,721. So now we put that into, we take the car and we rolled that into our home equity line of credit. And now we're working this car down, right? And that took 7 months because our expenses dropped, right, by this payment amount. Think about how powerful that is, you guys. They just got back in a second almost $1,000 of cash flow that they are now working this car loan down, and it was paid off in 7 months. So after 16 months, they paid total in interest on the home equity line of credit to get rid of all of these debts plus the car, $4,354. These were the two equity chunks that they used. And then this was the car payment that they were paying all right, the interest they were paying on that car, C-A-R, as they work down this first amount, okay? So now we have $4,354 that they paid in interest versus $56,526. What would you do? You would do velocity banking, just like I know you guys are here to learn it, right? Okay, so now we saw the power of that, right? So it made more sense for them then to take that $56,000 and pay off their debts instead of refinancing that mortgage, okay? Because had they refinanced that mortgage, they would have reset the clock and they would have paid $95,953 for nothing, because you would have to add that to their new 30-year mortgage. And how much would that be? And that is what I'm going to go over for you. I'm going to put an amortized schedule on the board and show you exactly what that looks like and how we then pay it off faster using velocity banking. So give me a second, let me write that on the board, and I will make things make a whole lot of sense when it comes to that mortgage and paying it off faster. Okay, and I'm back with some numbers for you on the board here. So as you can see, this is our amortized schedule. Now remember, they started with $319, okay? $319,500 to be exact. And after this first year was done, right? They paid $1,397. They paid $366 in principal, and they were down to $319,133. Now that was the starting point, so it wasn't a full year at that point. Okay. So what then can they do? What would they do then if they took $25,000 chunks out of their home equity line of credit? Now remember, if you guys don't have a home equity line of credit to work with, you could do this with a 0% credit card. You could take $10,000 chunks and do the same thing as they're going to do with $25,000 chunks, okay? So you can do it with $10,000 chunks at 0%. You just have to remember to include that balance transfer fee, right? So that would be around $400. Now, so what they did is, we know that they were 6.5 years in, right? And we are going to take $25,000 chunks. Well, how long is it going to take them to velocity bank $25,000 chunks? So let's just get rid of this here for a second, and I'll give you a quick example, all right? So we know we're going to start with our $25,000. Give me a sec to erase this. All right, so if we start with $25,000, right? So 25,000. Now, we are then going to, we know that our income, and sorry, I'm going to not take the time to write out my color coordination here. So this is the income, so $9,300, right? So that drops them to $15,700, okay? So that's their new balance. And then we have to then add in the $5,780, right? So $5,780 is our expenses. Remember, they've paid everything off. So their expenses are $5,780 still. And then we also have to add in our interest, all right? And we know that at 11.25, which is what their home equity line of credit was, that the interest is going to be $190 on $25,000. And when we velocity bank, we put our income in and our expenses out. We know there's that average. So then that means at the end of this first month, right, their balance is back up to $21,670. Okay, so $21,670. So how long does it take them to get rid of $25,000 using this income at this expense rate? Well, it takes them 5 months. So think about that, you guys. If it takes them 5 months to do $25,000, destroy $25,000 worth of debt, right? How can they then take care of this mortgage quicker? What can they then do? If they're taking $25,000 chunks, all right, and we start doing this, if we started it at 6.5 years, okay, every 5 months, we're putting $25,000 down on this mortgage, right? So that means that from the 6.5 years, we slap $25,000 against this mortgage, right? And it immediately drops us to $264. Now, I left it even just for ease. I didn't put in the extraneous dollars, right? So I'm just doing an even number, the $264. Okay, so this was one $25,000 chunk. Then we do it again in 5 months. We slap down another $25,000 chunk. That takes them to $239. And then in another 5 months, we're going to slap down 25 again. So now they're at $214. And then we do it again, and they're at 189. So as you can see, right, they're quickly taking care of this mortgage, and they're quickly eating away at those balances. All right. But in the meantime, there is interest, right? So there is interest that is charged on this. And so let me see, that interest, oh, let's see, let me grab it here. Give me a second, guys. It's 1,000 something. Hold on. Okay, I knew I'd find it. Sorry. All right. So the interest that they have paid in this 5 months of time, right, is $637. Okay, so it's $637. Now, for every time, right, you've done these chunks, you have to add your 637. All right, so we have to add 637. But we've also paid interest on the mortgage, right? Because we're paying the mortgage every month. It's not like we're not paying the mortgage monthly. We are. So then you're still having those interest charges that you have to add together as well, right? So I ran out of board. I only took it to 20 months here, but I wanted to show you the power of doing this way, right? So if we did 11 chunks at $25,000, okay? So that means we spent in those 11 months around $7,007. So it's $7,007 in mortgage interest, okay? And then we have to add 3 months of interest, okay? Because it was 11 plus 3 months. So we have to add in the 477. So what happens is we know it took them 4.8 years, okay, to get this accomplished. However, they still ran their mortgage for 6.5 years before they did these chunks, right? So in total, it took them right about 11 years. It was just shy of 11 years to get all of this done, including the 6 years that they have spent up until this point. So it took 4.8 years. We know that the mortgage interest that they spent, right, if you add them together, the mortgage interest, right, was $99,759 in mortgage interest, okay, to take care of the interest for these chunks. And then we can't forget, though, about our home equity line of credit. So we have to take the $7,007, we have to add the $477. So that gives us, okay, a total of $107,243, right? So they have paid this in that period of time. So that means in total, right, in total, if we take the 107,243, but we have to add our 95,953 because we know that they still spent that over that 6.5 years, okay, of time. They spent that. All right, so we have 95,93. We add it with this. So now what is our total interest paid? Our total interest on this mortgage that we paid is $203,196 versus, right, versus this here, the $315,644. All right. Now, so that means you have saved $112,448, and you have destroyed this mortgage in 11 years. A 30-year mortgage, think about that. A 30-year mortgage they took down to just under 11 years by doing velocity banking. Now, if you are not in a position to take care of your mortgage yet, don't stress out about it. I did. I stressed out about it every single day, knowing that that mortgage on that amortized schedule was eating away at our wealth, right? Like that drove me crazy. Don't do that, because if you can't take care of it yet, it is okay, because you will still win. Once you take care of the debts that you have, right? Just like they did. Once they took care of these debts, look at how quickly they hammered this down. Look how quickly this came down and how fast they got out of a 30-year mortgage, or they will get out of a 30-year mortgage. And just remember, you guys, life is going to happen in the meantime. So this is like the utmost best case scenario, right? That it will take them 11 years and that they'll pay $203,196, right? But you know, stuff happens and you're going to buy things along the way. You're going to make purchases along the way, right? There are things you're going to do to enhance the life of your family. And that is what velocity banking is all about, though. I want you to get out of your debts, and I want you to pay as little interest as possible, but you still are going to pay less interest over time when life happens to you. And life will life you. It's going to happen. You're going to have, life come up. You're going to do things, and you should have fun. You guys have one life to live. I have one life to live, and I want to make the best of it. So if you don't take and hammer down all of your income on this, that's okay, because you're still going to win, right? At the end of the day, you will still win. You might save maybe 100,000, maybe 90,000 instead of 112. So what? So be it. You're still saving $90,000. You're still, that wealth is still now yours. It is still back in your pocket, and you can do whatever you want with it. That is your prerogative. Your prerogative at that point. So I will do some more mortgage strategies. I have had a lot of people reach out to me since I did that on Easter, actually, about the mortgages and how that they can pay their mortgage down. And so I see that you guys are interested in this, and I'm going to make a concerted effort to do more of the mortgage pay downs for you so that you can see it. And I will get into more of the nitty gritty and into the in-depth detail. Now, I did also run for you guys. I ran a strategy to show you that if they were to refinance their mortgage, okay, and let's say they were offered a better interest rate. I think I did a 4% interest rate, all right? So they would have spent over 30 years, $222,000 or $25,000. But then when you add that 95 to it, right, that they've already spent, you're still in a worse position, right? You're still worse off than if you were to keep the mortgage you have at the higher interest rate and velocity bank your way out. So it doesn't matter, you guys. Do not be tempted by these lower interest rates out there. They do nothing but take you back. They work things backwards for you, and you end up resetting the clock, and you've thrown interest out the window when you can move forward, okay? You can move forward with velocity banking and save yourself a whole heck of a lot of money. I hope you found today useful. I hope you found today educational. That is my job. My job is to educate you, is to let you guys see a different way to bank, a different way to run your finances so that you win and you keep money in your pocket, right? Instead of giving it to the bank. Have a great day, you guys, and I will see you in the next video.